The night it all began, Eleanor Hartman, one of the most feared and admired CEOs in the city, stood in her penthouse kitchen with water pooling at her feet and panic pressing at her ribs. Hours before the most prestigious charity gala of the year, the faucet had burst like the pressure inside her life, leaving her kneeling on cold tiles while everything seemed to fall apart. She stared at the cracked pipe with trembling breath, wondering how a woman who controlled empires couldn't control something as simple as her own home. Then the doorbell rang, and the man who would change everything stepped inside, hands rough from work, shirt damp from rain, eyes carrying the exhaustion of someone who had lived too many lifetimes before 35. His name was Lucas Hale, the single dad plumber who charged less than he should because life had taught him compassion. Eleanor looked at him that night, drenched and worn, fixing the chaos she couldn't. She didn't know it yet, but fate had just handed her more than a solution to a broken sink. It had handed her the only person who would say yes when she was drowning. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected blessings, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Channel name. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Eleanor had always lived in a world polished to perfection, a world where emotions were tucked neatly under designer fabrics and success was measured in silent victories and sleepless nights. But Lucas walked into her life like a story she didn't expect to read. Calm, grounded, moving with a quiet strength that made her shoulders loosen for the first time in months. While he crouched down and worked on the pipes, she found herself watching him, noticing the calluses on his fingers and the small smudge of engine grease near his wrist. He apologized for the mess he carried with him, but to her, it felt like honesty in a world full of masks. When the water stopped and the room finally quieted, she exhaled as though someone had lifted the world off her chest. Then reality crashed back, the gala, the whispers, the board's pressure to appear stable, approachable, and, most importantly, in a relationship, to close a monumental deal. It was ridiculous, but in her world, even love was an accessory to negotiate success. Her planned date, a PR-arranged businessman, had cancelled last minute. Every option had vanished. Every phone call had failed. And as she looked at Lucas, still wiping his hands on a worn cloth, something inside her made a reckless leap. She needed someone trustworthy, kind, and willing to help. She expected him to decline, maybe even laugh at the absurdity of it. Instead, he paused, scratched the back of his neck, and said the words that felt like a soft rescue, "If it helps you, sure. I'll go." As they drove to the gala, the city lights painted the inside of the car with shifting gold and shadow. Eleanor's chest tightened with something unfamiliar, fear of being seen for the first time not as a CEO, but as a woman who was lonely, overwhelmed, and human. Lucas sat beside her, wearing the suit she hurriedly pulled from her guest closet, looking uncomfortable yet strangely graceful. He held himself like a man who had known struggle but refused to let it define him. When they stepped out at the gala entrance, cameras snapping like thunder, Eleanor felt her hand tremble. Lucas noticed without a word, and gently, discreetly, he slid his fingers into hers. She inhaled sharply, not expecting warmth to feel like salvation. Inside the ballroom, elegance wrapped everything in gold and crystal. People whispered, curiosity stirred, and the night felt like a silent test she wasn't ready for. But Lucas stayed beside her, steady as a heartbeat. When investors asked questions, he listened intently. When board members sized him up, he smiled with a sincerity they couldn't manufacture. He wasn't pretending to be anything he wasn't, yet somehow he fit into her world more naturally than those who spent their lives chasing its approval. Eleanor found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months at his quiet humor, his gentle observations, and the way he always positioned himself between her and anyone who approached too aggressively, like his instinct was to protect. As the evening unfolded, she began to see glimpses of the man behind the tired eyes. A widower who had lost his wife too early. A father who woke before sunrise to pack lunch for his daughter, Lily. A man who worked double shifts to give her a life she deserved. He wasn't someone who played roles or crafted illusions. He was someone who showed up when needed, even for a stranger. But everything changed when Eleanor overheard two executives mocking Lucas, calling him a hired prop, a charity case, and the plumber who didn't belong. Their words burned through her like fire. Before she could even react, Lucas touched her arm, calm, unbothered, almost reassuring. He whispered that he had heard worse in life and that their cruelty wasn't worth her dignity. The humility in his voice cracked something inside her. She realized she wasn't embarrassed for him. She was embarrassed for herself, forever believing she needed someone polished to stand at her side. Later, when they stepped onto the balcony for air, the night felt softer. The city hummed below them, and Eleanor finally confessed how exhausted she was, how lonely success had become. She told him about the pressure, the expectations, the endless performance. Lucas listened with a quiet intensity, his eyes warm, not judging. Then, in a moment that didn't need words, he reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek with the gentlest touch she had ever known. She felt her soul unravel. But the real shift happened when Lucas received a call from home. Lily had woken from a nightmare and was crying for him. Without hesitation, Eleanor ended the night early, canceled the after-party appearances, and rushed him home. When they arrived at his small apartment, she watched him cradle his daughter, whispering comfort with a love so pure it lit up the dim room. Eleanor stood in the doorway, feeling her heart break open at the sight. She realized then that power wasn't in boardrooms or ballrooms. Power was in kindness, in devotion, in the courage to love without condition. Days passed. What was meant to be a one-night arrangement became a quiet bond neither dared to name. Eleanor started visiting Lucas's apartment, sitting at the table while Lily drew pictures, feeling more at home in those tiny, imperfect rooms than in her entire penthouse. Lucas helped her fix things, not with tools, but with presence, with truth, with the steady kind of affection that healed without asking permission. Yet the world didn't stay silent. Rumors spread. Investors doubted her. Her board questioned her judgment, insisting she distance herself from Lucas to protect her image. She felt the old weight return, pressing on her chest, but this time something was different. She wasn't alone anymore. And when Lucas, in his gentle honesty, told her he would step back if it protected her, Eleanor made her first decision driven by heart instead of fear. She chose him, publicly. Fearlessly, she stood in front of her board and declared that she wouldn't sacrifice humanity for image, and if they wanted a leader who cared only for optics, they could find someone else. Her voice didn't tremble. For the first time in her life, she felt free. And something incredible happened. Instead of losing everything, she gained respect. People saw her not as an untouchable CEO, but as a woman with strength beyond titles. Investors who valued authenticity stayed. New opportunities opened, and Lucas, standing beside her, became not a liability, but a symbol of the very compassion and resilience her company claimed to stand for. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love can grow from unexpected places, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to CHANNELNAME. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to the world. Before the final moment of the story, please leave a comment about the part that moved you the most. Eleanor didn't fall in love with Lucas because he fixed her sink. She fell in love with him because he fixed the pieces of her life she didn't know were breaking. And Lucas didn't fall for Eleanor because she was a CEO. He fell for her because she learned to be vulnerable, to be soft, to be real. They weren't from the same world, but somehow, they fit like two broken edges forming something whole. In the end, love didn't arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. It arrived in a flooded kitchen on a stressful night, wrapped in exhaustion, sincerity, and second chances, proving that sometimes the heart finds its way not through perfection, but through the simple act of showing up when someone needs you most.